You're watching Drakewing Gaming. Enjoy the video.
Hey guys and gals, Never here from Drakewing Gaming. It's Stuffy Mountain Twitter, the Gaming Dragon. Today I'm coming back at you into the Let's Play episode of A Fall from Grace. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump right back into it, shall we? Alarm chain, you are up, and let's go. Alrighty, let's do it, y'all. The fox began heading down the road, and Cedric walked along beside him. The excitement was high, and both of them seemed to be looking forward to spending the next few days together. Yet, Cedric allowed himself to fall behind for a moment to take a look back at his old home. He lived his whole life here, moments both happy and sad, exciting and terrifying. It was hard thinking about everything and everyone he'd leave behind. Was he really doing the right thing here? The longer he gazed upon the town, the more these doubts began to creep in. However, he began to realize that when he thought back on it all, the happiest moments he'd had here were with Victor. When they'd reconnected that fateful night, it was the first time in as long as he could remember that he felt hopeful. Cedric turned back to Victor as he walked, and his doubts vanished, any fears fleeing from his mind at the sight of his old friend. If there was any chance at a life that would make him happy, it was with the fox. Quickly the coyote caught up so they could walk side by side. As soon the night landscape became quiet once again, the two friends' shapes faded out of sight, leaving the town they both lived in their whole lives behind at last. There we go. The two friends set off early the next morning after a few hours' sleep. The sun shone brightly in the sky, while a pleasant breeze rustled the leaves of bushes and trees nearby. Cedric's back was already hurting slightly. Not sleeping in his own bed was a part of this new lifestyle he had still had to get used to. He was walking beside Victor, who was already whistling as he marched on cheerfully. They weren't too far from their old home yet, as Cedric recognized the road they were on. In a few more hours, they would reach unfamiliar territory, which was a thought that both excited and slightly terrified the coyote. This path was often used by merchants and travelers heading from one town to the next. It had trees on either side and couldn't fit more than one carriage at a time, thus he imagined it would be perfect for someone like Victor to stage a robbery. The remains of an old fence stood to the path's left, almost overrun by the surrounding undergrowth. It gave this particular spot a rather picturesque feel, the coyote thought to himself. In fact, it was as if a gallant knight from an old novel could show up at any moment, riding his noble steed on the way to save his beloved from the clutches of an evil wizard. A sudden feeling of sadness filled Cedric as he realized Victor had missed out on many of those old books the coyote had enjoyed so much during his teenage years. He still had a lot to tell him about. "Did you sleep well, Cedric?" Victor had stopped whistling after noticing his friend seemingly wrapped up in thought. This really was the same old Cedric the fox remembered. The coyote had always made a habit of losing himself in his own thoughts, sometimes even during a conversation. This tended to occur pretty regularly, the last time having been only a few days before during his meal at the tavern with Lysander, Jack, and Bill. "Oh, yes, I'm still adjusting to all this, if you get what I mean." Victor chuckled softly, looking somewhat relieved. "Of course." The fox's expression turned pensive again as they walked on. "I hope I haven't convinced you to do something foolish." "What do you mean?" "Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I absolutely adore having you here by my side. It's just, this is going to be a big change in your life, and there's no going back now." There you go. "I just hope you don't come to regret this sort of choice, that's all. You don't just leave your life behind you and become a bandit any old day, you know. Don't worry, V, I've made up my mind. If anything does go wrong, it's not your fault at all. I was the one who decided to come with you. I trust you like no one else." "You're a brave man, Cedric." Cedric smiled and he looked the other way. "I am not." Come, have some pride and accept this compliment. It takes a lot of guts to do what you did yesterday. I don't think I've ever met someone quite like you. I must confess I admire you very much indeed." Cedric did his best to stop himself from blushing. Stop! I'm not worthy of these remarks." Victor noticed his friend was beginning to look slightly flustered and thought it best to change the subject. "I hope you're ready for more walking today. We still have a long way to go. You know I don't mind a good stroll. This is more than just a stroll, I'm afraid." "Don't worry, I'll be fine, I promise." The fox smiled playfully. "Are you sure those polished legs of yours can resist more than one day's journeying?" "You better watch your tongue, peasant, or you'll be carrying me on your shoulders soon. You know, it's been on my mind ever since we started walking this path. This would be a perfect spot for a robbery, wouldn't it?" Victor smiled as he turned to look at his friend, placing a hand on his shoulder and pulling him in his direction. "Well noticed, my dear. I see you already have the keen eye of a highwayman." Cedric laughed. "Hey, let go, you rascal!" After a short struggle, Cedric succeeded in brushing off his friend's hand from his shoulder, but groaned as it then began to slide down to his waist. You won't be getting rid of me that easily. The two of them came to a halt and observed their surroundings as Victor eventually let go of the coyote. Have you ever mugged someone here, V? This spot? Not as far as I can remember. We're still not that far from the town, but it would take me a while to get back here from foot. Perhaps if I stole a horse from my victims, the plan could work better. Ah, yes, I hadn't thought about that. Just one of the many things you have to consider in this trade. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I could tell you about a few of my best robberies instead, if you're interested, that is. Of course I'm interested. We still got so much to say to each other. Victor gestured at a fallen tree trunk nearby, and they both sat down. The fox pulled out a small flask, and after downing some of its contents, he began to narrate a few of his adventures as Cedric listened in awe. Despite his jokes a few minutes earlier, he had been genuinely concerned about his friend tiring out quickly, and thought these stories would be a good way for them to have a quick break. Where to start? Ah, I know just the tale. About a year ago, these two noblemen decided to have a duel over some petty argument, as rich idiots always do. It so happened that they chose a particular abandoned building as the location for their fight. You mean... Indeed, the bastards picked my hideout. I witnessed the whole thing as I snuck out, quietly blocking every exit in the building. One of them, I think his name was Edward, wounded the other quite badly. Whether this was by accident or not, I couldn't tell. Once he stood up after checking on his competitor, there was I standing behind him. To make things even better, they were both carrying extremely valuable rings and pocket watches. Of course, that sort wouldn't dare part from their precious objects even while battering each other. This goes to show what their priorities are. But from my job's point of view, it made no difference. What a lucky day that was. That's incredible, but what about the wounded fellow? Did he make it out alright? I'm afraid not. His wound was deep and he died a short time later. I don't even remember where I dumped the body. Sure, he looked a bit uneasy after that last detail. A bandit's life isn't all fun and games, Cedric. I'm afraid you'll have to get used to that. Switching off his serious tone, Victor continued more merrily. I'll tell you one more story. This is an especially interesting one. It had been a very unlucky week. I really wasn't doing too well. I was tired and had no money left. Every person I tried mugging had almost nothing on them, and I only narrowly escaped the guards a few other times. Then one evening I did something risky and mugged an old badger. A member of the town council, by the way, just outside his own front door. He just returned from a gambling house and was absolutely loaded with gold. So much gold I decided I would treat myself. I traveled to another town and actually bought his mask, a completely honest purchase. I added some of the decorations myself, even though my artistic abilities are notably beneath yours. Cedric rolled his eyes at that last remark. Come on, I haven't drawn anything in the last 2 years now. But getting back to your tale, I was wondering what did you use before the mask? Just a few rags to cover my muzzle. The mask is so much easier to wear and breathe in, and it didn't even cost me that much. Oh, but speaking of money, we need to be very smart with what we have here right now. I've only got a few coins on me, and I'm sure you don't have much either. Good thinking, my boy. However, in this case, we are quite lucky as I have this by my side. The fox gestured at the sack he'd been carrying along with him since they set off. Cedric had guessed it only contained food and perhaps another pair of clothes, but was now excited as his mind started racing at the thought of what kind of riches this humble sack could be hiding. What's in there? Where did you get it? Whoa, easy there. I'll show you in due time. For now, rest assured we can get by with what we have for a few days at least and sell some of it later on. Victor, I also have something for you. I'm sorry, I meant to give it to you yesterday, but I just forgot after everything that happened. Oh? What is it? I just need to find it. Cedric slightly mumbled that to himself as he rummaged around in his jacket pockets, pulling out a small white object and placing it in Victor's open hands. His friend's eyes lit up as he gazed at this object, realizing what he had been given. Cedric, you shouldn't have. I wanted to give this to you as a memento of all those wonderful days we spent together. Victor was holding a small white knight chess piece, still shiny and intricately ornate. He kept silent for a few seconds, then leant forward, hugging the coyote. It feels wonderful having you back here with me. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Cedric couldn't think of anything worth saying and just sat there hugging his friend with the biggest grin on his face. Then Victor let go and the two slowly got up from where they were sitting. I took that from Lysander's aunt's house, by the way. He'll drive him up the wall when he discovers that piece is missing. You have no idea how much he spent on that chess set. Funnier still, he doesn't even like chess. Fox seemed to ignore Cedric's last comments and gazed at the path in front of them. Victor? And his ears shot up suddenly. V? Someone's coming. We need to hide. Now! He shoved Cedric and the two quickly got off the path and hid amongst the green bushes and undergrowth. Then Cedric heard it as well. Marching footsteps. It sounded like a small group of about 4 or 5 people. They seemed to be quite well coordinated in their marching, and that could only mean one thing. Guards. Shh. Oh. Victor clapped his hand over Cedric's muzzle as the group finally came into view, reaching the spot where the two friends had been standing just a few minutes earlier. Cedric gazed at their red uniforms from his hiding spot as they passed by. They seemed to be common guards patrolling the roads from town to town. Most of them weren't too young, and their uniforms were well worn, and the color slightly faded after hours likely spent under the sun. They were equipped with some old rifles and a dagger each. However, there was something oddly familiar about them. Cedric thought he recognized their leader, adorned with a plumed helmet of sorts, but who was otherwise dressed identically to the other 3. After a few seconds, he almost kicked himself as he realized this was one of the soldiers he had spoken to when inquiring after Victor a few days earlier. How could he have done something so foolish? These guards were searching for both of them and knew exactly who Cedric was. The coyote's head drooped as he felt responsible for the mess they were in, now more than ever. The guards soon passed out of sight, and the sound of their footsteps began to fade in the distance. Victor broke the silence, turning to face the coyote. He was trying his best to hide a decidedly worried look. Strange to see these guards here at this time of day. Perhaps they've been alerted to something. What do you think? Cedric tried to think of something to say, but all he was able to do was sit there in silence. Whatever the cause, all the more reason for us to hurry up and leave this place once and for all. The fox began to speak louder as they stood up and made their way back to the path. We need to be very careful from now on. I'd rather we slept somewhere safer tonight. We can't afford any big mistakes. Cedric was quite sure what kind of place Victor was referring to, but seeing as the fox didn't elaborate, he thought he wouldn't bother him with more questions for the time being. The two began walking again, Cedric silently following Victor down the overgrown path. A few hours had passed and the sun was beginning to set, everything turning a soft shade of orange. The two friends had been walking for what was beginning to seem like forever, and it was starting to show. Their pace had gradually slowed down, and they were starting to grow hungry. Victor imagined Cedric wouldn't be able to walk much longer and had begun looking around, searching for something in the peaceful evening landscape. Cedric had kept silent since they'd set off after hiding in front of the guards. The fox hadn't thought much about this at first, but now he was beginning to wonder, was he just fatigued after a long day's walk? Or had the incident a few hours back had a deeper effect than he'd anticipated? Ugh. A coyote, seemingly noticing his friend's gaze, suddenly broke the silence. Look, V, there's something you should know. What's the matter? I noticed you've been very quiet since we set off again. Cedric gathered his courage as he gazed at the path beneath him. I've made this whole situation worse. I'm sorry. Victor came to a halt. He had not been expecting this at all. He let out a slightly confused laugh as he tried to picture the best reply to give in this situation. What? Come now, Cedric. No need to beat yourself up like this. I mean it. When I was searching for you a few days ago, I spoke to the leader of those guards. Victor didn't say anything, waiting for Cedric to finish his train of thought. I asked if they knew anything about you, and now they're out here searching for both of us, and they know damn well who I am. I'm such an idiot. Victor smiled. Cedric, it's all right. I told them about the mugging, described your appearance and everything. They're rather puzzled as to why I was searching for you, but luckily for both our sakes, I didn't elaborate on that detail. That's the long and short of it. I'm sorry. It's fine. Seriously, I can't say it was a smart thing to do, but they've been looking for us anyway. What with you disappearing and such. This just means they have a better lead than I had anticipated. Alright, y'all, I'm actually gonna pause it right there. Thank y'all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and check out our Patreon if you can. It always helps. Before I go, I'm going to give a quick shout out to our lovely bronze tier patrons. Thank you all for all I do for the channel. I greatly appreciate your support. Thank you to our silver tier patron, Cade Silver, and thank you going a bit above and beyond. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks to our 2 gold tier patrons, Zeke and Toby. Y'all are awesome. We love you. Thank you for subbing to Ultimate Tier. Anyway, if you want to get your names in the credits, get access to all of our not safe for work contents as little as $5. Alrighty, I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye!